The night my own son offered to take a walk, I thought fresh air might cool our fight, not test how long I'd survive alone. By dawn, a colder countdown had started, 10 days before a forged deed, a frozen bank account, and my home stolen from under me. You're watching Revenge Files. Subscribe for a new twist daily. I'm Margaret Hensley, 67, retired reference librarian from Denver, Colorado. I bought my small brick bungalow on South Gilpin Street in 1997 with my husband, and I kept it after he passed in 2014. It's one of those old Washington Park houses with squeaky floors and a narrow driveway, nothing fancy, but it's mine. The mortgage was long gone. Property taxes and gardening were my only real expenses. My son, Derek, 34, started staying with me short-term in September 2023, after his lease in Englewood ended. He said he needed a couple months to regroup while he built his mobile auto detailing startup. His girlfriend Amber moved in 3 weeks later with 2 suitcases and a ring light, saying my dining room had better natural light than her apartment. I told myself it was temporary. One problem: Derek is charming until you're inconvenient. When the detailing business lagged, he decided my house could fix his problems. He said a bank would lend him more if the house sat under his name as collateral. He could refinance, pull cash out, and scale. I told him no. I might be small, but a librarian knows how to read a deed. He argued again the second week of January. It was Wednesday, January 17th, after dinner. We stood in the kitchen with the dishwasher humming. He said, "Mom, sign the transfer. You'll still live here. It's just on paper." I said, "It's not your paper." Amber rolled her eyes and filmed a makeup tutorial in my dining room like nothing was happening. But then, Derek changed tactics. Around 9, he softened his voice. "Let's take a walk, get some air. We're both hot." He grabbed my coat from the hook, even wrapped a scarf around my neck with exaggerated care. I wanted to believe we were resetting. He drove instead of walking, said the park would be empty, and pointed us toward Cherry Creek Drive. He didn't stop in the park. He drove past the lighted shops, across University Boulevard, and down a frontage road I didn't know. The radio volume sat low, just a murmur. He said nothing. The houses thinned, then vanished. The evening dropped into that dry, high plains cold that stings the throat. He pulled onto a service road cut through dried weeds, killed the lights, then the engine. The silence felt staged. "Get out and breathe," he said, voice flat. I opened the passenger door. Cold slapped my face. The moment my feet hit gravel, his door clicked shut. I turned to ask what this was, except he locked the doors, stared forward, and drove away with my purse, my phone, my house keys. He didn't drive fast. He just rolled back to the highway, taillights shrinking, while I stood there in the dark, scarf flapping. I called after him like he forgot something. But the only sound was wind. I have arthritis in my left knee, but I started walking. I followed the glow of a billboard until I hit Arapahoe Road and spotted a Conoco sign in the distance. My fingers went numb before I reached it. My mind did that odd librarian trick of compartmentalizing while facts multiplied. January 17th, 9:40 p.m., no phone, no money, no keys. Son did not forget, son abandoned. The night clerk at Conoco was named Luis, a college kid who wore a beanie indoors. I asked to use the phone, voice shaking. He pushed a black cordless across the counter like he did this often. I called my neighbor, Tom Wilkie, who works nights as a hospital security guard and lives across the alley from me. He answered on the second ring. "Maggie, why are you calling from a gas station?" he asked. "I think Derek left me," I said. My voice broke there. Tom drove out in his Subaru and found me holding a styrofoam cup of coffee like a life ring. He took one look at my white knuckles and said, "We're calling the police." I didn't argue. We pulled into my driveway at 11:08 p.m. and Tom dialed Denver police. I watched my own porch light swim up through the windshield and felt anger crackle hotter than fear. An officer from District 3 arrived in 20 minutes. He listened, asked precise questions, and wrote in a narrow notepad. "Do you feel unsafe now?" he asked. I looked at my front door. My spare key was in a planter on the porch, a fact Derek knew. "Yes," I said. The officer checked the house. Derek and Amber weren't home. Their mess was a scattering of detailing flyers on the dining table, 2 half-empty energy drinks on my grandmother's runner, a box of cheap microfiber towels on the floor. The officer suggested we contact Adult Protective Services. "This may meet the standard for elder exploitation," he said without drama. He gave me a case number and a link to the Denver Police Economic Crimes Unit. He advised changing locks immediately. Tom stayed. While I did the ugliest thing I've done in decades, I texted Derek from my old Kindle, which still connected to the house Wi-Fi. I typed, I made it home. Police report filed. Locks changed tomorrow morning. I addressed it to the group thread with Amber, too. He replied 3 dots, like he might type something human. Then, that's dramatic. We were cooling off. I sent back the case number. Then I shut off the light and told Tom I'd sleep in the guest room with the baseball bat under the bed. Neither of us slept. Morning brought clarity. I called a locksmith at 8:05 a.m. and paid $279 to rekey both doors and add a keypad deadbolt. I called Denver Human Services, Adult Protective Services, and reported in a slow, steady voice, the kind librarians use to calm something wild. The intake worker took my history, asked about dependencies, asked about finances. I told her Derek didn't have access to my accounts, and I meant to keep it that way. But then, at 10:16 a.m., I found an email sitting in my spam folder from a notary I didn't know, timestamped 2 nights earlier. It read, Miss Hensley, confirming appointment Friday 1/19 at 3 p.m. to notarize warranty deed transfer. Please bring government ID. My scalp prickled. I hadn't booked any notary. I followed the email's phone number and called. The woman, a mobile notary named Janice, picked up cheerful. Hi, Janice Alexander, she chirped. This is Margaret Hensley, I said. I didn't request your services. There was a pause. Papers rustled. Oh, your son Derek booked it, she said. Said you wanted to move title to him for a refinance. He forwarded a draft deed with your name. I exhaled slowly to keep my voice even. Please cancel. And if he gives you a document without me present, that's a problem. He does not speak for me. Janice lowered her voice. Understood. I'm deleting the appointment. I hung up and called the Denver clerk and recorder. A patient clerk named Missy told me they had an alert service for property owners. She walked me through signing up for Fraud Sleuth on their website, which sends email alerts if anyone records anything with your name or parcel. I said it with a tremor in my hands. Then I called an attorney. Paula Klein's name came from a librarian friend who dealt with an ugly neighbor dispute. Paula practiced elder law and real estate in Cherry Creek. Her assistant set a same-day meeting. The retainer was $3,000, billed against $350 per hour. Numbers like that made me swallow hard, but the house was worth more than any retainer. Paula was my age, with steel-gray hair and clear glasses. She listened, didn't rush, and then laid out a plan like a table of contents. First, we build a fire break, she said. We move title to your revocable trust. You are trustee. Your niece, if you trust her, can be successor. That insulates against any sham deed, because you'll have fresh chain of title dated after his attempt. Second, we seek a temporary protection order for elder exploitation and harassment. Third, we gather evidence of abandonment and attempted coercion. And fourth? I asked. She smiled thinly. We let him step into his own trap. Paula drafted everything while I watched. I named the trust Hensley Living Trust. We executed a quitclaim deed from me to the trust for $10 consideration. She notarized with her in-office notary, stamped with a square blue seal that looked like authority itself. Her courier filed the deed at the clerk and recorder before 4 p.m. We also filed for a temporary protection order at Denver County Court, scheduled for an ex parte review that afternoon with a judge on the domestic docket. Except, the judge didn't rubber stamp anything. The clerk called me at 4:35 p.m. The judge wants a brief hearing tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Bring your neighbor if he witnessed your return. The court was efficient like only government on caffeine can be. I spent that night assembling receipts. I printed the Conoco phone record item from the store, which Luis produced when I asked politely, and handed him a written request. I held the printed notary email in my hand like a thread that might tug everything loose. I took photos of the driveway's single set of tire tracks from Tom's Subaru when he brought me home, and of the changed locks with the invoice. Derek sent a new message at 11:12 p.m. We need to talk tomorrow. You're overreacting. Amber felt threatened. I didn't reply. I tucked the Kindle under the guest pillow and stared at the ceiling until midnight bled into early morning. Court let me breathe differently. There's a ritual in fluorescent lights, metal detectors, and numbered doors. Tom met me at 8:10 a.m., tie crooked, kind eyes steady. We sat behind Paula in courtroom 170, a small space with gray carpet and 3 rows of seats. She guided me with a touch on the arm when the judge, Honorable Marla Brewer, called our case. Paula kept it simple: age, dependency, incident, threat. She handed exhibits, the notary email, the Conoco statement, the police report, the text thread printout. Tom described my white face and shaking hands at the gas station and in the driveway. I told the judge. He left me on Arapahoe Road. No money, no phone, no explanation. He scheduled a notary to move my deed. I am afraid of what he'll do next." Judge Brewer tilted her head slightly. "Where is the son now?" she asked. "I don't know," Paula answered. "He has been living at Miss Hensley's home but did not return last night." Judge Brewer signed an order after 10 minutes. The temporary protection order barred Derek from the house, from contacting me except through counsel, and required him to collect his items only with a police standby. A hearing for a permanent order was set for January 30th. Copies were given to the sheriff's civil unit for service. Paula squeezed my hand. It was a small map toward safety. But then, at 2:03 p.m., my fraud sleuth email pinged, recording attempted for parcel 5,236 to 13:0 to 0000. My heart revved. Missy at the recorder's office picked up on the first ring when I called. "You're fast," she said. "Someone tried to drop a warranty deed conveying your house from you to Derek Hensley, recorded with a photocopied notary seal. The counter clerk flagged it as suspicious because your trust deed hit yesterday." "Can I see it?" I asked. She emailed the scan. It was clumsy, like a kid tracing a signature. My name was spelled correctly, but the signature slanted right, not left like mine, and the signer used my old middle initial that I dropped in 2002. A notary stamp from a strip mall in Aurora sat blurry and misaligned. The clerk had refused to accept it and alerted staff counsel. Paula's voice stayed level when I called. "This is better than we hoped," she said. "It's clear attempted deed fraud. We'll file a notice of claim and ask the clerk to index it as rejected for cause. That strengthens our case for quiet title if he tries again." I expected Derek to slink. He did the opposite. He came home. It was Friday afternoon at 5:14 p.m. I stood in my front yard with Tom and a locksmith who had just installed a secondary strike plate when Derek's black Ford F-150 rolled into the alley. He hopped out wearing his detailing jacket, jaw clenched, eyes bright with the righteousness of a son who saw himself as the real victim. Amber sat in the passenger seat scrolling, not looking up. Derek rounded the gate, yanked the latch, and stopped short. Bright yellow letters were stapled to my wooden fence: "No trespass, order of protection pending, Denviv." County Court. The sheriff's civil papers were taped beside it in a sleeve. Tom stood on my porch, arms crossed like a guard. The locksmith, a tough woman named Shay, set down her drill. Derek went pale, all the oxygen blown out of him. He tried on a smile. "Mom, you called the cops? Really?" I said nothing. Paula had trained me. Don't engage. Let papers talk. Shay lifted her phone and said cheerfully, "Buddy, there's a cop parked on the corner for a standby. You'll want him present if you need to get your stuff." She pointed to the Denver police SUV idling with an officer doing paperwork. Amber whispered, "This is too much," and Derek turned his anger on the paper. He stepped toward the porch, and Tom stepped down one stair. The officer rose from the SUV. Derek stopped. The world rearranged itself right there, around a quiet man in a uniform and a stapled piece of paper. The officer did what officers do. He read the order, explained terms, offered a 15-minute window to collect essentials under supervision. Derek took 2 duffel bags and his laptop. Amber left with her ring light and a box labeled skincare. The officer handed Derek the court date. Derek didn't make eye contact. He said, "This isn't over," which every bully says when they feel rules bite. He was right. It wasn't over. It was only moving rooms. The next week was motion after motion. Paula filed a civil complaint to quiet title and for declaratory relief attaching the rejected deed, the notary cancellation, and the trust deed. She also sent a demand letter to the notary whose seal had been photocopied, asking for his statement. We subpoenaed security footage from the Aurora shipping store where the fake notary allegedly worked. Adult Protective Services assigned an investigator named Ellie. She was precise, gentle, and relentless. She interviewed me at my kitchen table and then visited Derek at the storage unit he rented in Commerce City. He told her I was forgetful and paranoid about money. Ellie's pen didn't stop moving. But then, a fresh complication blew in mid-week like a prairie gust. My bank's fraud department called to confirm 3 pending cash withdrawals from my checking account, $600, $400, and $200, all attempted at different ATMs within 20 minutes around Broadway and Alameda. My daily limit was $500. The first went through. The next 2 were blocked. I had not made any. I checked my purse. My debit card sat where it should, tucked in a worn leather wallet. Except when I held it to the light, I saw a thin white line along the edge. Paula looked and said, "That's a cloned card replacement." Someone had swapped it for an identical-looking card. My stomach hit the floor. Derek had borrowed my card to run to Safeway 2 days before the dark road. He returned it cheerfully. Paula placed urgent calls. The bank froze my account, reversed the $600, and issued a new card with a different number. We pulled ATM footage with the police case number. The Economic Crimes Unit detective called me Monday. Footage shows your son's truck at the first ATM, he said. Professional but not cold. We're referring this to the DA's elder exploitation team. Every action felt like stacking bricks into a wall while Derek threw pebbles in pretended outrage. He sent emails to Paula claiming I was coached and that I'd consented under stress to transfer title. Paula responded with 3 sentences, and attached the police report, the notary email, and the protection order. No flourishes. Just paper. The permanent protection order hearing arrived on January 30th. Derek came with a cheap suit, a flamboyant tie, and a new lawyer who spoke too loud. Amber didn't show. Courtroom 170 looked the same, but I felt different sitting there. Tom sat in the second row behind me like quiet backup. Ellie from Adult Protective Services sat on the aisle with a brown folder. Derek's lawyer argued first. He painted the abandonment as a miscommunication between a mother and her adult son during an emotional walk. He said Derek had booked the notary to help his mother with paperwork. She'd asked him to research. He suggested I was losing capacity. That sentence landed like an insult shaped as concern. Paula stood and sliced their story cleanly. She introduced the Conoco log, the property alert, the rejected deed, the ATM footage timestamp with the truck plate. She called Ellie, who testified to my clarity, the consistency of my retellings, and the risk pattern common in exploitation cases. Ellie's voice never wavered. She said, Miss Hensley is lucid, organized, and self-protective. The son's actions, including isolation and financial pressure, meet the markers we monitor. Then Paula did a small, devastating thing. She played a 1-minute audio clip from my doorbell camera recorded 2 days earlier. Derek had come to the porch when he thought I wasn't home. The camera picked up his voice muttering, "If she'd just sign, I'd be out of this." You could hear the scraping of a key he tried in the new lock. It didn't fit. The clip ended. Judge Brewer issued the order without fanfare. Permanent protection order granted for 1 year, renewable, she said. Respondent is prohibited from the property and contact with petitioner. Any property retrieval must be through counsel or police standby only. Derek's jaw set tight. He didn't look at me. The deputies gave him a nod toward the hall. Tom whispered, "Breathe," and I did, a little deeper than I had in weeks. The civil case moved slower, but paper still worked. The recorder's office flagged the attempted deed and, at Paula's request, indexed a notice of fraudulent instrument linked to my parcel, which meant any title search would see glaring red flags. Paula filed for summary judgment in the quiet title action, supported by an affidavit from Janice, the mobile notary who had canceled the appointment, and another from the Aurora notary whose seal had been faked, stating he'd never met me or notarized any deed for me. But then, Amber surfaced. She sent Paula an email at 1:07 a.m. on February 7th, subject line, "I need to tell the truth." She wanted immunity from whatever in exchange for information. Paula explained she wasn't a prosecutor and couldn't give immunity, but she could listen. Amber came to the office that afternoon with nails like little knives and fear in her eyes. She handed Paula screenshots from Derek's phone, which she'd backed up when he went to shower. Drafts of a deed, a tutorial on how to notarize without the person, a maps search for older ATM without camera Broadway. A text to a friend read, "Once deed hits, HELOC will be easy. Then she can relax." Amber said she'd left him after the protection order and moved in with a cousin in Lakewood. She wanted it clear she hadn't known the road drop-off plan. Paula took a written statement and, at Amber's request, later sent it to the economic crimes detective. Amber asked for bus fare. I handed her a 20 and said, "Make a clean start." Paula filed Amber's statement under seal and supplemented our motion for summary judgment. The DA's office filed an information charging Derek with attempted theft over $100,000 and identity theft for the ATM card. I learned court language I never wanted to know. We set the civil hearing for March 12, 2024, in Division 409 of Denver District Court. That morning the sky was bright as polished bone. Paula wore her steel glasses and carried a slim binder. The judge, a measured man named Clarkson, was crisp and skeptical in the way of judges who don't like melodrama. He read everything. He looked at Derek's lawyer and asked, "What admissible evidence counters the plaintiff's exhibits?" The lawyer offered a heartfelt speech about family misunderstandings. Paula didn't raise her voice. She walked through chain of title, my 1997 warranty deed, the 2024 trust deed, the rejected forged deed. She displayed on the courtroom screen the slant of the forged signature versus my bank signature card from 2019. Left slant versus right, looped G versus closed. She placed side by side the ATM footage still where Derek's jacket logo was visible next to the truck plate. She put Amber's screenshots on a page. Judge Clarkson ruled from the bench. Summary judgment for plaintiff, he said. The court declares the Hensley Living Trust the sole owner of the property located at 653 South Gilpin Street. The instrument presented for recording on January 19, 2024, purporting to transfer title to Derek Hensley is fraudulent and void. Defendant is enjoined from presenting any further instruments affecting title to this property. Plaintiff is awarded attorney's fees in the amount of $11,400 pursuant to the deed fraud provisions, and the court's inherent authority to sanction bad faith conduct. Numbers on paper can feel abstract until you see the other person hear them. Derek's cheeks went blotchy. He turned to his lawyer and whispered with urgent mouth shapes. The judge added, "Any violation will result in contempt and a $500 per day sanction." He banged his gavel softly, like punctuation more than noise. But revenge, the kind that settles, wasn't the dollar figure. It came in a slow, deliberate set of steps that afternoon when we returned to my house. I had scheduled a property walkthrough with my new locksmith and a home security vendor. We installed a small steel gate on the alley, a motion floodlight over the back door, and a keypad for Tom and my niece, Sarah. We put up a tasteful brass plaque by the mailbox that read, Hensley Living Trust. It wasn't for show. It was a legal line. Then I did one last thing Paula suggested. I posted a laminated copy of Judge Clarkson's order in a clear sleeve on the inside of my front window facing the porch. The top line said, Quiet Title Order, March 12, 2024, Property of Hensley Living Trust. The paper existed for any courier, realtor, or dreamer, especially one named Derek. We didn't have to wait long. Derek drove by, as people do when they circle a life they tried to take. It was 7:22 p.m. The street was pink with sunset. He parked across from the house and sat with his hands on the wheel. I watched from the front room with Tom, who had brought a celebratory peach pie. Derek eventually stepped out, crossed the street with that confident walk that used to charm teachers, and came to my porch. He stopped when his eyes hit the laminated order. His face drained in the porch light. He read each line, jaw ticking. He looked toward the window and saw me in the chair beside the fern, holding a cup of tea, not moving. He didn't knock. He didn't yell. He just read it twice more, glanced back at his truck, and left. The doorbell camera caught him whispering, "She did it," as if cunning was a foreign language he had just learned to read. The criminal case dragged through spring. I attended 2 hearings, flanked by Paula and Ellie. Derek took a plea in June to a reduced count of attempted exploitation of an at-risk elder and misdemeanor theft for the ATM. The judge ordered 2 years of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service at a senior center, restitution of $600 to the bank, and a no-contact order for the duration. He also ordered a financial literacy course, which marked the only time I smiled in court, imagining Derek learning compounding interest from a bored facilitator. Meanwhile, life slid back into its grooves. I hired a gardener again. I went back to water aerobics at the rec center on Louisiana Avenue. I spent a weekend with my niece Sarah, the one I named as successor trustee, reviewing a binder Paula had built, trust documents, power of attorney, health directives, property alert instructions. We added a second property alert for my name with the county. We made a list of passwords. Sarah put the binder back on the top shelf where cookbooks used to sit. But then, a final ripple hit in August when I received a letter from a temp agency asking to verify Derek's employment history for a background check. It listed Hensley Mobile Detailing, owner. I laughed for the first time about any of it. I wrote back, "No such business exists at my address. Do not contact this household again." Tom framed the letter, and it hangs in his garage like a trophy from a hunt neither of us wanted. I still see Derek sometimes. Denver is smaller than it pretends. I spotted him at a gas station off Evans, pumping gas into the F-150. He kept his eyes on the numbers. He looked older in that way people do when they hit walls hard. I felt the old ache like a bruise, the one where a mother's love and a citizen's duty collide. Then I drove on. The house is quiet in the evenings. I read on the porch. The brass plaque catches late light. Some nights the air cools quickly, and I remember the road, the cold, the scrape of gravel, and the way my breath fogged as I walked toward a gas station glow. I also remember the porch light the night he returned and went pale at a piece of paper. It turns out revenge, when you're a librarian, looks like files in order, dates aligned, signatures straight, and a judge's cursive on a final page. Some people think you win with a shout. I learned you win with a record. And when the wind rolls through Washington Park now, I breathe it in, knowing my house stands under my name, the right one, and the only walk I take is the one I choose.